Hi guys, welcome to AP Environmental Science video 7. It is on ecological relationships. So here's a table of the relationships we're going to talk about. You need to have the effects on both organisms written down, and you also need to have some examples of those different types of relationships. So the first one is going to be neutralism. The two zeros mean no effect. So there's no effect on one organism and there's no effect on the other. This does not happen often in nature, but when it does, a good example might be a tarantula in the desert and its effect on a cactus. So we don't really know exactly if there is any relationship, but we don't think there is between these two organisms. So we say they don't have any kind of effects on the other ones. They are neutral. A relationship where one is harmed and the other is just kind of not affected. This is called amensalism. Remember, if you put a in front of anything, it makes it the negative. So maybe this can help you remember the difference between amensalism and commensalism. Those are usually the two we get confused. So a mensalism example would be a tree growing and shading out another tree. So one tree is harmed while the other one is not affected. A commensalism example, one is benefited and the other is not affected. So a bird's nest in a tree. You also have the remora swimming with the shark. The remora are getting food and shelter from the shark, and the shark is not really affected at all. And you have cattle egrets, which are the birds that sit on top of cattle and wait for the cattle to walk around, and then they kick up the insects, and the birds can get those insects, whereas the cattle don't really have any effect. The birds don't affect the cattle at all. We have competition, so between two tigers or two deer, for territory, for space, for mates even. This is going to have a negative impact on both of those different organisms. Now, there's two different types of competition. One is intraspecific. This is between the same species, so two lions, two tigers, two deer. You also have interspecific competition. That's going to be between different species. So, for example, a rhino and a buffalo, for example, in this picture. So mutualism is both organisms are going to be benefited. For example, the bee is pollinating the flower. It's also getting food. The sea anemone and Finding Nemo. The clownfish is living inside the sea anemone, and they're chasing away predators from the anemone. And then we have predation, and we also have parasitism. Both of these situations are going to be positive for one and negative to the other. And we're going to spend a little bit more time talking about this situation, so we'll get lots of examples. So 1 in 3 Americans are going to be affected in some way by a parasite in their lifetime. Most of them have a pretty complicated life cycle, but they go through the host, then they go through eggs, larvae, there'll be a period of rest, and then they'll find another host and they'll go back through that cycle. So there are two different types of parasites. One is endo, the other is ecto. Endo is inside your body, ecto is outside. I will give you a little bit of warning here. There might be some slightly disturbing or gross pictures that you might see. So in A, we have an ectoparasite, the mosquito, and in B, we have some worms, which are almost always going to be endoparasites. So again, worms are the endoparasites. They're very, very common to humans. They can be very large, like a tapeworm that we'll talk about, or they can be very, very small, like mites and things like that you have to see with a microscope. So here's what a tapeworm might look like. You may hear people joke about, I have a tapeworm because I'm eating a lot, I'm gaining weight. This is what a tapeworm would look like. They can be 50, 60, 70 feet inside of your intestines, and they essentially just eat the stuff that's going through your intestines. Now, this one has blocked some intestine parts, so there had to be surgery to take out that part. A child, if they frequently itch their butt, you should maybe check to see if they have pinworm. They're little like whitish worms. You can actually see them on the outside coming out of their behind, but they're also on the inside as well. Dogs usually have heartworms. This is the most common parasite in the dogs. That's why they take heartworm pills to try to get rid of this every month. Here's some ectoparasites. We have fleas, ticks, bedbugs, leeches, mosquitoes. Mosquitoes we will talk specifically about when we talk about human populations because they carry so many diseases like malaria. They also carry HIV and AIDS, things like that we don't want to get. And the sea lamprey is also an ectoparasite. It's an invasive species, which means that it came from somewhere else and was introduced into a new area. And this actually attaches itself to its victim and it kind of bores a hole into the flesh and feeds off the person that way or the animal that way. And so here's an animal that has had that happen to it. The key though for parasitism is it doesn't need to kill the host. If it kills the host, then the host is dead. It has to go and find another one and it has lost its food and its shelter. So the host is really important for the survival of the parasite. Here's an example of a plant parasite. It is mistletoe. So I know everybody thinks that mistletoe is awesome around the holidays, but in fact it is a parasite inside a tree. Bacteria can be a lot of different things. Bacteria can be mutualistic, helping us digest food. It can be commensalistic. Most of the bacteria in our body is this way. They benefit, but don't cause us any harm. They benefit from being inside our body. And there's also parasitic bacteria that's harmful to us and can cause problems and make us sick. The last topic we're going to talk about is coevolution, and this is when two organisms adapt simultaneously to the other as they go through evolution and changes. So we'll hit on evolution shortly as well, and we'll come back to this topic. But these relationships can include predator-prey, parasite-host, competitive species, and also mutualistic species. As one is changing, the other changes and adapts to that other organism. For example, we have predator-prey relationships. These are constantly changing. As one increases, the other is going to decrease. So here you have the hare increasing in population, the prey. That means that the lynx, the predator, can also increase in its population. And it's a pretty stable curve here, and you see this happening up and down, this cyclic curve. And I want to draw your attention to a phenomenon that's happening right as the prey population is decreasing. You don't see the predator decrease exactly in the same time. And that phenomenon, I'm going to write it up here on the screen for you, is called lag time. So what is happening here is the hare population is decreasing, and for a while it doesn't have an impact on the predator enough to where the predator is going to decrease yet. Eventually, though, the hare population will go down enough to where then the lynx population will also be affected. So just make sure you understand that that is the lag time, that difference in the curve from the predator and the prey decreasing. All right, bring your questions with you tomorrow, and we will go over this.